Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a driving test from Chilwell Driving Test Centre. Now this is actually a driving test, so I'm not in the car. However, I'm aware of the faults that were made on this test, so I can go through those quite accurately with you as we watch this video. You notice as we leave the car park, the examiner's coming out the building there, of course. Be very mindful of people moving around when you start your test. Keep your speed nice and low as you go through the car park, and keep to the left hand side because it is a two-way car park. And you'll see this pupil does a fantastic job of keeping the speed really low as she makes her way around the test centre car park. As she approaches the end of the driveway to leave the test centre, you'll notice the bushes on the left, buildings on the right. Just make sure you come up to the end really slowly and take care to check both sides of the road are clear. It's quite tight and you'll get a lot of big vehicles down here, so you want to avoid just throwing yourself out into that road. Sometimes nerves can cause us to react a little bit quicker than we should, so you've got to really consciously slow yourself down for the exit there. Up to the traffic lights, the pupil is going to be taking a left turn. Now we are going to be sat at the red light for a few moments. If you find yourself sat at lights like this, don't just stare at the lights. Make sure you do pay attention to them, but keep your eyes moving as well for other information that might be useful for when you move away. If you've got a cyclist coming up behind you, for example, or one approaching from the footpath on either side, they may just ride out straight in front of you, or blue light vehicles coming up as well, that if you can spot them early, you can plan early and allow yourself more thinking time to handle that situation more safely. And one of the most important things you can demonstrate to the examiner is that you are aware of your surroundings. So keep your head moving, keep your eyes moving, and just show them that you know what's going on. As the pupil turns left, there are two lanes, and the normal position is going to be the left-hand lane. You should only use the right-hand lane if you're overtaking or you intend to turn right. So the switch over to the right here by the pupil is because the examiners asked them to turn right at the next set of traffic lights. You should always take your time when you move in lanes. Make sure you check your mirrors and your signal, and you give people behind plenty of time to react to that change. And as you come up to these lights as well, what I want to see is mirrors and signal before you enter that filter lane. Don't wait until you're in the filter lane, because then the signal is pointless because everyone already knows what you're doing. And again, traffic lights, while you're sat here, use that time to take a breath, to reset your mind and focus on what you're doing. If you have made any mistakes, leave them behind you, of course, and use this as like a starting point for your next section of driving. Divide it up into small bursts, and it just makes it more manageable. Keep your eyes moving, of course, and watch for anyone who might affect you as you start moving through those lights. Noting the filter arrow as we come through there, you can see all the other traffic stops. That filter arrow gives the pupil a clear path to cross. You should, of course, look out for vehicles that might cause you an issue, such as vehicles that may not be paying attention to the lights, blue light vehicles, cyclists that might be filtering through the traffic, and so on. Green light does mean you can go, of course, but it means go if safe, so you're responsible for checking that it's safe when you cross over. Travelling down Swiney Way here, you can see the pupils hovering around 26 miles an hour, which is fairly comfortable. There's a fair bit going on, such as the side roads, the crossings, the pedestrians, the oncoming cars. So you just want a nice balance of speed. We don't necessarily have to get up to 30 miles an hour, but if the road's clear and you can safely do so, then that's what the examiners will expect to see on your test. So you can see the pupil's speed creeping up and dropping again between 25 and 30 based on what's going on. Where there's more going on, she's easing off and just letting herself have more thinking time, and that's absolutely spot on. As well as this, something you won't be able to see is frequent mirror checks to make sure you know what's going on around you, checking both sides of the car and the center mirror, just to ensure you've got good clearance on the curb, that your positioning's good, that you know what's coming up behind you, and that you're keeping yourself fully aware of what's going on. And that awareness is going to show the examiner you know what's going on and you're prepared for anything that's happening. If someone comes up behind you and you're not checking your mirrors and that vehicle overtakes, such as a motorbike, for example, if that happens and you're not demonstrating good awareness, you're potentially going to pick up faults for that lack of awareness. It's going to cost you because you're not going to be prepared for that vehicle to overtake you. So lots and lots of mirror use. Make sure your eyes are moving constantly. At these traffic lights, we have got some roadworks. You can see the people lining up for a right turn and all of the main lights switched off. So we're looking for temporary lights or workmen to guide you through. Now, because we've got neither of those, you can see the pupil treating it like a normal turn, a give-way junction. She's approaching really slowly, just making sure she can cross that junction safely. So if you're faced with a traffic light junction that is not working, treat it like a give-way and approach with a readiness to stop. Again, lots of observations is going to help show the examiners that you know what you're up to and what you're doing. And that, of course, is going to keep you safe too for after you pass your test. As you can see ahead, we've got quite a steep hill going up Totem Lane here. Now, you might find that your car slows down as you reach that hill, so you've got to account for that uphill. The weight of the car is going to be against you, and we should be responding by adding a little more power to help it up the hill. Just being nice and careful of vehicles pulling out, like on the left there, and any limitation to sight, such as the brow of the hill there, making it difficult to see what's coming the other way. So the pupil here is just lowering her speed as she reaches the top of the hill so she can see more comfortably what's going on before committing to it. Now, a few people do get caught out on this section of road thinking it's a 40-mile-an-hour road. There's been no signs telling you that. It is still 30 all the way up to Bardell's Island, which we're coming to. Notice the direction signs on the right here. So you'll need the left lane for Derby, the middle or right-hand lane even for everything else, Stapleford and Nottingham, and then that filter lane off to the right to take you into Toton tram stop. So you can see the pupils lined up for Derby here, and as we get to the roundabout, you'll see first exit on the sign, and then our lane splits into two, so you can take up either of these positions. Looking for those signs is really important on the approach to junctions like this, because the examiners may give you a direction such as follow signs for Stapleford. If you do find yourself in the wrong lane or a lane you didn't intend to be in, then just follow it. If you can't change safely, stick that position and go where it takes you. And as long as it's not leading you onto a motorway, then you are not going to get faulted for it, as long as you do it safely as well, of course. So you can see the pupil here making a way around the bend, mindful of this crossing here as well, because occasionally people do want to use that, surprisingly. And then you can see the national speed limit sign. So you want to be building your speed up as you get onto this road, aiming for 60 to 70 mile an hour ideally. Now, of course, if it's not reasonable to do that, if you've got HGV in front that's doing 50, then by all means you can keep up with that HGV rather than overtaking it, because you're not going to be on here for very long. If you do feel confident to overtake, get on those mirrors, get out there and get the car moving so you can get that overtake done nice and swiftly. We don't want to be dithering out in lane 2 as we creep past a lorry or anything, because then you're going to find yourself struggling to exit when you're meant to. Now, it's the sign on the left here, Sandy Acre, half a mile off to the left, and that's where the pupil is going to be heading. So as we approach that, that sign there is giving you the heads up to be in the left lane if you're not already there. You'll then get your 3, 2, 1 countdown markers as we get close to the junction, and you'll see these on the left coming up any moment now. When you get to those markers, get on those mirrors, get your signal on, but do not slow down. You want to maintain your speed, keeping that speed up until you leave the carriageway. Now, you notice the pupil's speed does drop a small amount as we're coming up to this exit, but she's still keeping it near the 50 mile an hour mark, and that's really good to see. Crossing over that line, you can then lose the signal, see who's coming with you, and line yourself up for what you're doing next. This pupil's going Sandy Acre, so you can see her lining up on the right, see the markings, SCRE, and on the sign, the Sandy Acre exit's on the top right. So you want to be in your lanes nice and early. Typically, you'll either be going Sandy Acre, so right-hand lane, or Long Eaton, left-hand lane, first exit as you come up to this roundabout. When you enter, you want to be following those lanes round, watching your mirrors frequently, and looking ahead for signs which tell you where to go. If you notice the sign up ahead on the right, you'll see the middle lane is Sandy Acre, and the pupil lines up beautifully with that center line. Absolutely spot on. We've then got some lights, so of course do what the lights tell you, stop at the line if it's red, and then as you go around and under the bridge, just be mindful there is another set of lights under that bridge, so you don't want to come rushing around that curve, because sometimes there will be a queue under there. As always, if you stopped at the lights, keep your eyes moving, looking out for anything approaching behind, such as the car on the right and the lorry that's about to appear on the left. If you're showing good awareness, then the examiner is going to be more inclined to reduce the severity of any faults they record. Notice the sign for Sandy Acre on the top in front of us, and the lines just guiding us out to the outer line. So the pupil's done a really nice job there. Again, I want to see mirror use as we're doing this, because sometimes you'll get people trying to change lane on those curves, and signals before you leave. Notice Sandy Acre there on the sign pointing left. So again, mirrors and signal before you leave, watching out for anyone who might be affected by your change, or who might affect you when they change direction as well. Now, leaving the roundabout, of course, we've got a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and then we've got some directions up ahead. You'll see Sandy Acre is right. It's a little bit further up before we get to the junction where the pupil's going to be turning right. So that sign is a little bit early. Normally, I'd tell people to put the mirrors and signal in place as they're coming up to those signs, but on this occasion, you want to get a little close to the traffic lights before you do that. Mirrors and signal before you take up your lane, and then, of course, look for what those lights are telling you to do. You'll notice in front the vehicle's turning right, and on the far side of the junction we've got a green light. There's also a green filter arrow on the bottom there, allowing the pupil to just turn freely. Again, that green light means you can go if it's safe, so just confirm it's safe before you commit to crossing that junction. As the pupil comes along here, you'll see that there's quite a few parked cars and a little bit of weaving in and out to be done. Whenever you're moving through gaps like this, just make sure you're safe. If you've got big vehicles coming the other way, then my advice would be to be more cautious as you come up to these gaps. And if you're not sure about any spaces, then be more defensive. Hold back and let other vehicles move through before you go through if you're not sure about that space. If you do feel there's enough space, if you're confident with that space, of course, keep yourself moving and use those mirrors as you move around. Right mirror before you move out, left mirror as you're passing by and moving in. And that's going to show the examiner a good awareness of what's going on around you. Remember, it's not just about going through the motions of looking in those mirrors, it is actually seeing what's there and assessing it. That's what's going to keep you safe after your test. The motions themselves might show the examiner and tick some boxes, but you want to be actually aware of what's going on. Don't just go through the motions. Joining any queues like this, you can see there's quite a lot going on ahead. We've got HGV trying to make its way through, so that might be what's causing the blockage. You can see the pupil keeping a really nice gap behind the car in front. She's not getting right up to the bumper of it. She's giving herself plenty of space to get around it if she needs to. And the examiner here is going to ask her to pull up on the left. So if you look at where the pupil is actually pulling over, you'll see there's no driveways, there's a raised curb, and she's positioning right up to that curb as well. Now, when you're asked to pull in behind a vehicle like this, sometimes the examiners will say to you, don't worry about the driveways. If they say that, by all means, block the driveways. But if they don't say it, assume that you've got to keep those driveways clear. This one is an angle start, so you're pulling up behind a vehicle and then moving out around it. The examiners, again, want to see really good observations, not forgetting that right shoulder check before you pull out. My advice is to double check it as you start pulling out as well, just to make sure. And then as you go, be mindful of oncoming cars, that you're not swinging out into the path of them as well. So the pupil's done a really nice job there. And then moving down the road, we've got quite a few parked cars. You can see her keeping the speed a little bit lowered, sitting around the 20 mark, which is perfectly reasonable if there's a lot going on up ahead, or you can see hazards up ahead. She's going to be asked to pull over again on the left in a moment. And again, it's a case of just pulling up at a safe place. Give people behind plenty of time to respond to the fact you're pulling over, and of course make sure you can get back out again. Now, I stand corrected. I think this is the angle start, and the last one was just pull up on the left and move off. You'll be asked to do it several times. One of them will be an angle start where you're specifically asked to pull up behind a vehicle. So just be mindful of what the examiners are asking you and do your best to follow their instructions as safely as you can, of course. Remember, you're the one in charge of the car, so it's up to you where you pull over, and the examiners are not going to pick somewhere to try to catch you out. Moving out again, don't forget those blind spots. And my advice again, when you're going around a parked vehicle like that, is double check your blind spot. And of course, looking ahead to be mindful of oncoming vehicles as well. When you're following a big vehicle like this, I would advise giving it more room. You can see the pupil here has taken that advice really well. She's not getting too close to it. You look at the size of that vehicle and how much it obstructs the view of the liner here. And that is exactly why we don't want to get right up to the back of it. If we can't see around that vehicle, then we're limiting how much time we've got to respond to what's going on ahead of it. If you give yourself plenty of time, plenty of space, you can see around it, and you've got plenty of reaction time then when things change. Before moving off, make sure you cover those mirrors one last time, just watching out for any cyclists who might be making their way up the side of the traffic. Particularly the left side, you'll get cyclists sneaking up between you and the parked cars or curbs, and that can be quite risky if you move off as they're passing you. So mirror checks are really essential, and like I said earlier, if you sat in a queue or you sat at traffic lights, don't just stare at what's in front of you. Make sure you're looking around and keeping yourself up to date on your surroundings before you move away. We've got a little bit going on here with the parked cars and the entry on the right there. Just be mindful of cars that might stop to turn into little. Then of course you've got the crossing, so just a lowered speed as you come through there. Don't rush through busy situations. Lower that speed and give yourself more thinking time. Use those mirrors to keep yourself up to date, and that's going to keep you aware, and it's going to help you keep safe on the go. Again, checking your right mirror before you move out around these cars, and your left mirror, just ensuring you're leaving enough space. Ideally, a door's width as you're going past those cars. Another pull up on the left for the pupil, and it seems to be another angle start pulling up behind another parked car. Now, sometimes being asked to do this several times can cause pupils to worry that they're doing something wrong. If you feel you're doing something wrong, you've got to try and put that feeling aside and move on, because as you've seen here, the pupil's done nothing wrong, but it looks like she's asked, or rather being asked by the examiner, to do 3 angle starts, which is really unusual. So as before, just make sure you're being aware of cars coming up behind, checking that right blind spot before you pull out and double checking it, like the pupil did here, holding back till the bus has passed by, and just being mindful of any other oncoming traffic. Because remember, you're swinging out into their road space, and even if you're pulling out onto your side and they're coming out around a parked vehicle, you're not a moving vehicle, you don't have priority, you're moving into their path. So make sure you're letting them by first if you pulling out affects them. The pupil's going to be taking a right up here, and you can already see on this road there's quite a good view of what's coming the other way. You've got a lot of parked cars, and you can see the car on the left there waiting for them to come down. So with that view in mind, you can make a really good decision as to whether you continue up the hill or hold back. Now, as I said earlier, if you're not sure, then the answer should be hold back until you are. If you can see someone coming the other way, then definitely let them come down that hill first. That level of forward planning and demonstration of awareness is not only going to look good on your driving test, it's also going to keep you safe after you pass. And of course, that's the whole point of doing your driving test, is that you want to be able to look after yourself after you pass. There's quite a few parked vehicles up here, and you'll notice up ahead on the right a car coming out from one of the side roads. The pupil responds really nicely here by starting to lean in, but then realizing that car is waiting for her, she moves on. And that's a really good response to that car. She was ready to wait, which is what we should be doing. And then as soon as that gap opens up, away she went. The examiner asked the pupil to pull up on the left again here. Again, you'll do this several times during your test. Being asked to pull over several times quite close together isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong, but it is worth just keeping on top of those routines, like getting those blind spots checked before you move out, and making sure you're pulling up in a really good spot when you do pull over, like the pupil did here. She's keeping driveways clear. She's keeping herself clear of obstructions on the right as well, so she doesn't create a bottleneck in the road, which is going to make passing traffic struggle to get through. So plenty of room there when she pulled over, and that's all the examiners want to see, is that you pull up in a good space, and that when you move away again, checking your blind spots and picking a safe opportunity to move. Remember, don't rush away as well. You can sit there for a few moments, catch your breath, and clear your mind. Remember, if you're dwelling on any mistakes, you are going to distract yourself from what you're doing, and that's going to be a bigger problem than the mistake that you've made itself. So make sure you clear your head and focus back on what you're doing before you move away. At the end of the road, the pupil is going to be turning right. It is a little bit tricky to see what's coming from the left here because the road bends away. So you can see the pupil being quite cautious as she comes up to the end. So she's just giving herself plenty of time to make effective observations before pulling out. Don't rush out of junctions. Take your time and make sure you're safe. Because remember, the most common reason for failing a driving test consistently for the past few years has been effective observations at junctions. And it literally means coming up to a junction like that, not giving yourself enough time to look around and just riding straight out into that new road without making sure it's safe first. So take your time if the visibility is poor. Don't rush out into those new roads. Up ahead, we've got a roundabout, and the pupil's going to be going straight ahead, third exit, and that's signposted Long Eaton B6003. Now, the sign does look as if it's off to the right slightly, but it is classed as straight ahead. So as normal, you'd use the left-hand lane on approach. And when these vehicles move up, you'll see those markings confirming that this leads to the B6003. Entering the roundabout, you want to make sure you keep that left-hand lane as you go around. Remember, it's the third exit. Exit 1 there for Nottingham. Exit 2 is the garden centre. And see how the lines guide the cars all the way over to the left-hand side, ready for exit 3. And then, of course, we've got a separate filter light to make way off the roundabout. What you want to do there is make sure you go nice and wide as you come up to your exit. Now, it is quite an unusual path to take on this roundabout, but it is very well marked, and the examiners will expect you to see that and follow it nice and wide towards your exit. Entering a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and we've got some traffic lights ahead and the tram stop on the left, which is a really common place for the examiners to take you to do your parking manoeuvre. Now, on this driving test, my pupil is asked to do a reverse bay park in this car park. So we're going to come up to the lights, turning left, nice and slow as you go in because it is a car park, and you're going to see cars move around, you're going to see people going to and from the cars, so we don't want to rush through. Additionally, on this particular car park, those speed ramps are really nasty. See how high that other learner bounced over it, and you see how awkwardly and uncomfortable that looks just from the camera movements there. Now, when you're doing any maneuver, 3 things to remember are control, accuracy, and observation. So let's start with observations on this. Whenever you're reversing the car, you want to be looking around the whole of the car frequently. So over both shoulders, in all of your mirrors, out of all of your windows. Remember, you've got windows all around you, so make good use of all of them, particularly when you're reversing. Control is all about keeping the car slow and steady, and that's going to help you make more time for those observations and also give you more thinking time to improve your accuracy. So the accuracy on this maneuver is you want all 4 wheels inside that space. If they're on the line, then you can still pass, but with a driver fault. If they're over the line at all, then you're going to get a serious fault. So if you're not in the bay fully, my advice would be to pull out and correct it. Don't be shy to correct it. You will not fail your test for coming out and correcting it. As you can see from my pupil, I teach the 45-degree method, where you pull up directly in front of the space you want. You put full lock away from the space until you're about 45 degrees out, and then you put full lock the other way to bring the back wheels in. Now, this is where your mirror use, your observations are really important. You want to be focused on where you want the back wheels to finish and gently adjusting the car, keeping it nice and slow, not forgetting to keep those eyes moving and those shoulders covered frequently throughout the maneuver. Remember, if you miss the space, you can pull forward and correct it. It's only going to cost you a driver fault to do that, which is far better than getting a serious fault for not being in the space. Now, in this car park, the bays opposite are directly in line, so that can help you with lining up the car. And you can see from those bays that the pupil's got absolutely spot on into that space. So no faults picked up for this because she's taken her time, she's been looking around frequently, and she's got the car in first time. A little shout out here to Mr. Cooling, who is sat there in his e-Nero, very fond of his electric vehicles, and he's very possibly a strong factor in why I switched from diesel to hybrid last year. As we're leaving the car park, the pupil is going to be turning right and then left at the traffic lights. Now, it's really important to get the positioning right on here. Don't beeline straight over the junction. You want to get all the way into that left-hand lane because there are 3 lanes at those traffic lights. The left one for left, the middle and right are right turn only and bring you back up to Bardills. So you can see the pupil going all the way over to the curb, left mirror, left signal, of course, before you make that turn. And then, of course, the green light allowing the pupil priority. Make sure you still do a cursory glance when you come out through a green light because you never know what's coming from the right unless you check. We've got our arrows there telling the other lane to merge in as there's 2 lanes coming across from the lights behind. Shouldn't cause a problem here, but still worth covering those mirrors just to be safe. You don't know who's coming out behind you unless you're on those mirrors. So that awareness, again, really important factor of driving safely and getting through your test successfully. As we're coming back towards Toten Hill, noting this is quite a steep hill, it's really important to monitor your speed on the way down here. I find that my car does run away down this hill, so you've got to be on the brakes. You can see the learner in front is working their brake as well. That's going to keep your speed under the limit of 30. If you do let it run away, you're going to start picking up those faults. Notice the speed on the bottom left of the screen there. The pupils kept it under 30 quite well. So really, really good example of what to do there. Braking down that hill just to make sure you don't let the car run away. Now up ahead, we've got those roadworks where the lights were previously out. As you come up, you'll normally take the left-hand lane to turn left at the lights or follow the markings out like this to go straight ahead or right. I've never had a pupil ask to turn right at these lights from this side, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. So coming up to here, we are going to be taking a left turn. You can see the learner in front signaling. You have to do it from this lane because the other one's coned off. So the examiners aren't going to fault you for being in the wrong lane because you physically can't be inside those cones to make the turn. And because the lights are out, treat it like a giveaway. Look around and make sure you're safe before you make that turn. Again, really good example of how to do that from this pupil, taking a time into that junction and then leaving the junction, get on those mirrors, see if anyone's coming across behind you. Remember that awareness is really key to keeping you safe and successful on your test. And then, of course, make progress up to the speed limit if the road allows it. You'll see the pupil sitting at the high 20s as she's going along here, which is absolutely fine. She's keeping up with the flow of traffic and also maintaining a good following space on that car. Because it's a learner as well, we want to make sure you give them plenty of room. Remember, the highway code tells us be mindful of learners. They may make mistakes, they may make misjudgments, they might not be as quick to react. So it's our responsibility as drivers to give them more space. And this pupil here, despite being a learner herself at the time, is doing a really good job of giving the learner in front plenty of space. As we come around the bend, you might notice the 20 sign inside the fencing there. Now, whilst it is in view, it's inside the fencing, so it doesn't apply to you. It's still a 30-mile-an-hour road. I've had a few people get caught out by that during lessons. Not had someone do it on test yet, thankfully, but just a really easy thing to get caught by if you're nervous, if you're not thinking clearly, if you're feeling stressed on your test. And this is why it's important to keep your head clear, keep your mind focused on what you're doing, and not overthink what's going on around you. It's often that overthinking that makes us doubt our decisions and then make mistakes as a result of that. So keep your mind really sure and focused on what you're doing. Make sure you're confident when you go for your test. You don't want to be questioning yourself. You just want to go for what you think is right and trust yourself. Up ahead, we've got a roundabout. We'll be turning right, third exit, and then left at the traffic lights. Now, these arrows in the middle of the roundabout, those are highlighting where you should not be. That is part of the roundabout. You do not want to drive on those arrows. See the learner in front and how they keep clear of those arrows. That is exactly what you want to do on the way around. When you're doing a right turn, it is easy at this point to lean in as you're looking around. You can see the pupil does get a little bit close, but still manages to keep clear of that curb, so no faults picked up again there. At these traffic lights, you'll see we're in a left filter lane, and on the left-hand side, you'll notice there's 4 lights. You've got your red, amber, green, and you've got a green filter arrow. If you're first in line, it may be difficult to see that arrow, so there's one on the far side of the junction on its own. Keep your mind on that light, but also keep yourself aware of what's going on around you, what's coming up behind you, what's approaching the junctions from the sides that might affect you when you go. Now, I see a lot of experienced drivers at this junction who fail to see that filter light come on. If you miss it, you are going to pick up a serious fault for not responding to the traffic light. As you come out that junction, then of course, keep your eyes moving, look ahead, and you can see the pupils taking up the first lane before changing over, ready for the right turn back into the test centre. Now, as with when you change lane on the way out of the test centre, use those mirrors, get those signals on, make sure you're safe before you move. Don't just rush across those lanes because you've got to move. You've got to take your time and make sure it's safe. Mirrors, signal, mirrors again, and then move if it's safe. Turning right at the lights, you'll notice we've got a independent light for our turn. So you've got the lights on the left-hand side of the junction for straight and left, and these on the right for us turning right only. Sometimes they will work separately, so make sure you're looking at the correct set of lights and responding to those. If you respond to the other lights and start moving when it's not your turn, again, that's going to create a risk and potentially cost you your test. Coming around into Eldon Drive and then turning right into the test centre, that brings this driving test to an end, and you can see the pupil has got an amazing clean sheet on this test. Going into the test centre, she does not make a single mistake, again keeping it really, really slow, keeping to the left and taking a time at each of the turns. A really good demonstration of how to do it. At the end of a test, the examiners may ask you to just drive forwards into any space. You're not being marked for this typically, but remember the test is still on until the examiner says to you, that's the end of your test. Car secured, engine off, that's the end of your test. That brings that test video to an end. As you can see, this is a fantastic result from this pupil. I hope you found this video useful and it's helped you in preparing for your own driving test. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll try and keep these videos coming, of course. Thank you again for watching, and God bless.